Are you layering the injuries in your relationship? This question is so important for us to ask ourselves in our relationships because so many couples don't realize the way in which they accidentally increase the impact and the harmfulness of the conflicts and the injuries that they possess in their relationship. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how you can assess if you're exacerbating the injuries in your relationship and things that you can do to decrease the injuries that happen in your conflicts. So stay tuned. All right, I've been excited to share about this topic for quite a while, and I hope you really enjoy it. This is such a critical and important thing to understand for couples in their relationships. This idea that our injuries are made up of two parts. And as we understand what those parts are, we can manage our conflicts a lot better and create healing a lot more efficiently. But most people don't understand that there's two parts to the injuries that they're experiencing. And because of that, there's one part of the injury that can sometimes linger for years, sometimes a lifetime, that never really heals, despite the efforts that we try to put in as partners to create that healing. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about that secret, about that part in the injury that you really can do a lot to help strengthen and heal and overcome in order to have greater connection with one another over time. So I call this principle the layering of the injury principle. And here's how it works. In any given injury, there's typically two parts to that injury. There's the objective part, and then there's the perceptual part, the part that's created by perception. Now, the objective injury is the one that most people identify the easiest. It is the actual injury that occurred, right? So there'll be an actual injury in the relationship, something that was harsh or mean or critical or defensive or insensitive, whatever that thing is, the actual behavior that created the injury. And then layered on top of that is the perceptual injury. It's the injury that's created by perception. In other words, on the receiver side, the person who's receiving the injury, it's the meaning that they attach to that objective injury that is the perceptual, right? So it's the way that they take it. It's the way they internalize it. It's what they decide it means that they can either add to or take away from the injury. In real, literal terms, expand it or layer it thicker, right? Or decrease the injury, depending on what they do with perception. So I was working with a couple recently that went through this process, and it really created a nice dynamic in order to highlight this principle. What had occurred is that from the beginnings of this couple's relationship, she's always felt a little bit jealous of his best friends, right? So he has lived a long time single in his life. They married a little bit later in life. And because he was single for so long, he has these bro friends that are his kind of main go-to people. They've gone through a lot together as single men, and they've been friends for a really long time. So they've built this lifelong relationship that she's always felt a little bit envious of. She can tell that he's excited to spend time with these friends. He's so excited to make room in his schedule to be with them, to hang out with them, to go golfing with them, to go see a movie with them. That he really enjoys these relationships, and he loves her. It's not that he doesn't love her, but their relationship's a little bit more new. And because their relationship is a little bit more new, she doesn't quite have the depth of experience with him that a lot of these bro friends do, right? And as a result of that, sometimes internally, she feels sensitive, she feels insecure. Sometimes internally, she feels envious, right? And for good reason. She wants to mean the most to him. Right? And she should. She is his life partner, right? So she wants to mean the most to him, and she gets jealous and envious sometimes. And this has created issues in their relationship. They've only been married for about 3 years now. And over those 3 years, it started slow, and then it's built since then. It's really created some sensitivity and some injury in their relationship. They've had quite a few conflicts about how often he spends time with these bros and the activities that he wants to go do with them. Many of them are still single, so oftentimes that means him just kind of hanging out with them, her not being part of that, and him being a little insensitive as well about how he splits his time, feeling pulled between two relationships that really mean a lot to him. They haven't handled all that well, and they both have a part in that, right? But this is the way in which they come into my office. And so one of the recent examples then that really highlighted this layering of the injury principle is these friends were coming into town. And the husband kind of told his wife, hey, my bro friends are coming into town, and we're excited to kind of hang out for 2 different days. Here's some different activities that we're going to want to do. I just want to let you know, I don't want you to feel hurt or blindsided by that. Do you have any issues with that? And she kind of responded and said, no, that'll be fine. She's trying to do well and be supportive. She knows how much these people mean to him. So she's like, no, that's fine. That's okay. But, don't completely lose track of me while they're here. Let's touch base and let's communicate and things while they're here, and I'll get you all to myself when they're gone, and that'll be okay. So they kind of, gave each other permission, and here we go. These friends came into town. They stayed at a different place, but they hang out together 2 or 3 times both days. And he's doing a pretty good job so far in that process of keeping in communication with her, touching base with her, helping her feel connected. And during one of the interactions, he was going out to dinner with some of these friends. And the place that they were going to dinner actually happened to be one of her favorite restaurants. And so she said to him, hey, while you're there, would you mind picking up this dish for me before you leave and bring it home? I'm just going to, work through at work. I'm going to get off kind of late. I'm going to take advantage of, kind of staying in late because you're going to be hanging out with friends. But it would sure be nice not to have to prepare a meal when I get home, that I can come home and I can just eat this dish that you bring from the restaurant. And he said, oh yeah, babe, of course, I got you, right? I got you, that no problem. So he goes to the restaurant with his friends, and while he's at the restaurant with his friends, they get talking and joking and laughing and reminiscing, and he totally forgets to order her dish before he leaves, right? So they're talking, they leave the restaurant, they go get some ice cream, and they call it an evening, and he heads home. And when he heads home, he's there for about, 15, 20 minutes, and then she rolls in from work. And, they hug each other, and how did it go? And, they talk a little bit. And then she goes into the kitchen and hopes to pull out of the fridge this dish that she asked him to pick up at the restaurant. And as she's looking in the fridge, there's no dish. and she's livid, right? She's so upset at this stage. She slams the fridge, she stomps up the stairs, and she goes into the room, slams the door, and isolates, right? And he's kind of sitting downstairs, just kind of unwinding, and he hears this, and he's like, what the heck is going on, right? So he follows her up the stairs, and he kind of peeks into the room, and he's like, babe, are you okay? And she's like, no, I'm not okay. And he's like, okay, why? Like, why are you not okay? And she's like, seriously? Seriously, I have to explain this to you? I literally have to explain this to you, why I'm not okay. And right about this time, it clicks in for him, and he's like, oh, shoot, I forgot to bring home that food you wanted, right? And she's like, yeah, you did. Now leave. And she kicks him out of the room, jumps in the shower, right? And they just have tension for the next 2 or 3 days before they come in and talk with me, right? So this was a great example to highlight this principle, to highlight this layering of the injury principle, to take a recent injury and apply this principle to it. And I would encourage you at this point in the video to kind of pause and in your mind, consider what is a recent injury you've had with your partner. Try to apply it to this principle as we talk through it from here forward, right? So think of a recent injury with you and your partner, and let's apply it to this principle. So we're in our session now, and we're talking through this. They just got done kind of debriefing it, and we kind of broke down the injury. We wanted to dissect it a little bit to identify the 2 parts, right? There's going to typically be 2 parts to every injury. There's going to be the actual injury, the objective reality of the bad behavior that occurred. And then there's going to be the perceptual injury. That's the injury that the person who's on the receiving side of the injury accidentally adds to or layers on top of the injury. So it's an additional injury that's self-inflicted, right? The objective injury is partner-inflicted. So as we talked through this dynamic, I asked her, what did it mean that he forgot to bring home your dinner, right? What did that mean? And here's what we came up with as we really dissected that down. Now we're talking about the perceptual part of the injury because we already highlighted not cool, man, not cool, right? Your wife's already feeling sensitive about the priority that she is in your life, and you keep telling her that she's a high priority, and I actually believe it. We have to keep in mind this gentleman also struggles with a little bit of ADHD, which means the attention deficit is real and the hyperactivity is real, and he has a hard time organizing. He has a hard time remembering, structuring. This isn't just with her. He does this with work and other things in his life. He loses focus, loses track. That's not an excuse for him. We still want him to grow this, but it's a context that can be helpful. And it's a context that can be helpful in reducing the perceptual side of the injury, right? So still not cool. It's not cool, man, right? Like, you shouldn't forget your wife's dinner. That's a really important thing for you to do. So it doesn't excuse the issue, but we wanted to break down, now that we have the objective injury understood, we want to break down the perceptual injury. And here's what we came up with. So when I asked her this question, what did it mean? She said, well, he doesn't care. I said, okay, tell me more about that. What do you mean he doesn't care, right? Well, he doesn't care because he didn't bring me home to dinner. Okay, and what does that mean that he doesn't care? And she said, well, it means I don't matter to him. I said, okay, tell me more about that. She says, well, I wonder sometimes if I've ever mattered to him. I oftentimes feel like I don't matter to him and that I've never mattered to him. And I said, okay, so tell me about that then. What does that mean that you don't matter to him? And she says, well, it means that he doesn't love me. And she said, I don't think that he's ever loved me. In fact, what if he's never loved me? And what if I'm unlovable? This is the whole chain reaction that she's going through as she goes upstairs, slams the door. They have the brief argument, and then she gets in the shower, right? This is where she's gone with it. This is where she's taken it. This is the meaning that she's attached to him forgetting to bring home dinner. She's questioning at the end of the day if he's ever loved her and wondering if she's even lovable, right? If my guy, the guy that I've given myself to more than any other person in the world, the guy that I've dedicated my life to, the guy that I thought should know my value and my worth more than any other person, if that guy doesn't love me enough to remember to bring me home dinner when he's with friends, what meaning or worth or value do I have, right? This was really catastrophic for her. And you can see how that perceptual injury actually ends up being of larger pain and hurt and suffering than the forgetting of the dinner, right? That she's able to acknowledge the forgetting of the dinner, yeah, that's frustrating and it's annoying and it hurts. But that doesn't hurt near as bad as where this perceptual side of the injury went, right? Questioning at the heart of her if she even has a value or if she's worthy of love in general, right? And if he's ever loved her. The absent-mindedness of not bringing home dinner has caused her to question whether she has any value at all to her husband, right? So pretty catastrophic. Now, if we take this and put it in a graph, this is what it would look like. Right, so we have the actual injury of 100% of the total injury. We have the actual injury representing around 20 to 30%, and maybe 70% of the injury being the perceptual injury, right? So him forgetting to bring home food, not cool. It's annoying, it's irritating, it's frustrating, and it feels insensitive. It should change. It should be something that he works on. He should grow this thing to reduce the situations that he leaves her feeling neglected, right? So that actual injury is a real thing. But of the total injury that she's feeling, it probably represents about 30%. The other 70% is that perceptual chain reaction that she went through that has caused a much deeper, a much longer lasting injury in the relationship, that's using the forgetting of food as evidence for the idea that maybe I don't matter and that my husband doesn't love me, that he's never loved me, and maybe I'm unlovable. That's a huge injury, right? It's going to come with huge emotion and huge behavioral and relational consequences if it's nurtured for too long, if that idea, right, simmers too long in the relationship. So it could end up looking like this. Now, she could soften that total injury by maybe doing a perceptual shift, right? If she could reframe a little bit and say, okay, I believe that I'm lovable, and I believe that I matter, and I believe I actually matter to him. It's hard for me, though, to believe I matter more than the friends. I want to matter more than the friends, but this type of behavior makes it hard for me to believe that I actually matter more than the friends, because the friends are the thing that made him distracted from doing the thing for his wife, who should be the most important person, right? So if she was able to reframe in that way, this is what it would look like. It would move that perceptual injury in a reduced kind of way. It would reduce it down and reduce the total injury that she's experiencing in the relationship. It doesn't get rid of all of it. It hasn't fixed the objective reality, right, that says that there was an actual injury. And she hasn't reframed all of it in the healthiest way, but she's reframed some of it. And you could see how that could reduce the total pain of the injury. Another way that this could look is he could work to heal the injury. He could take these steps to kind of clean up the injury, to say, babe, I'm so sorry. That shouldn't happen. It's definitely on me. I do love you way more than I love my friends, right? They're my bros, they're my buddies. I care about them, but I love you, right? Like, you're important. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to do better. You deserve me to do better, right? So he could really do a good job to try to clean it up. But if she holds to that perceptual injury, nope, you don't love me. You've never loved me. This shows me that you've never loved me. You do things like this all the time. I'm not sure that I'm lovable at all. You can see how she could hold on to 100% of the injury, 100% of the pain that she's feeling, even though he tries to clean up his part, right? It's all that he can take accountability for is the 30% of her total pain that is his actual bad behavior, right? And we want him to. He needs to. He's got to be accountable for his actions that create injury and hurt in the relationship, right? But you can see in this diagram how even if he does that, there's still the potential to hold on to a perceptual injury, an injury that she might not realize exists in her perception, but she's going to feel the full weight of the consequences of that truth, even though it might not be objective truth. Another way that this perceptual injury can work is that sometimes in relationships there isn't an actual injury, right? What I mean by that is there wasn't actually bad behavior. Right? Let's say, for example, a different scenario. In this case, there was, right? He forgot to bring home the food. That's not cool, man. But let's say in a different scenario, let's say that he comes home from work and he's preoccupied and he's stressed, right? So he's not mean to her. He's not cruel to her. He's not cold to her, right? But he is preoccupied and he's stressed. He's focused. He's not really paying attention. And she could have really been looking forward to him coming home today. Right? And because she's looking forward to him coming home today, she could take his preoccupation as she's worthless and she doesn't matter. She doesn't have value in the relationship, right? Objectively, he hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't been rude to her. He hasn't been defensive to her. He hasn't been cold to her, hasn't been harsh with her, but he has been preoccupied and he's had a difficult time focusing, right? And as a result of that, she could pull out of that a meaning that says, I don't matter to him. He doesn't look forward to seeing me at the end of the day. She could even go as far as he regrets me, right? That if he loved me, he would come home bright-eyed and excited to hug me. There might not be an injury at all on his part of the relationship, but his stressed state could create a trigger that sets off the same chain reaction that we discussed earlier. A different topic, but she could feel the full weight of the injury that says, my husband doesn't love me, as a result of him being preoccupied, right? So that's an example of 100% of the injury being a perceptual injury versus an objective injury that has perception layered on top of it, right? Another way that can go too is that some injuries are 100% objective, that a person's actually done a really good job at maintaining and managing the perceptual side, not layering it with additional perceptual injuries, right? Just seeing the injury for what it is. He forgot to bring home my dinner. That sucks. That's frustrating. I don't like this ADHD thing that he has, and he gets even more distracted when his friends are in town. But it is what it is, right? The irritation and the frustration is simply that he forgot the dinner and that's hard and difficult. Now I'm having to figure that out. I know he loves me. I know he cares about me. I love him too, right? It's just frustrating. So that would be an example of her doing a really good job, not expanding the injury with another perceptual injury layered on top, right? Going down that chain reaction, just sticking with the actual injury. And the only way this injury would heal is if he takes accountability for that objective injury and works to apologize and repair it in the moment, and over time works to reduce its frequency in the relationship in general. But our goal in all of these circumstances is to create healing in the injuries. And in order for a couple to really get to this place that they find healing in the relationship, it's important that they're always looking for the two parts to the injury, When you feel injured in your relationship, asking yourself the question and trying to dissect, even doing it on paper, like we've shown you in these graphs, doing it on paper and saying, what portion of this injury is objective? It's an objective injury, right? There was a thing that happened. They said something rude. They were insensitive, right? They forgot something in the relationship, right? What is the objective part of this injury? And then what might be the perceptual part, and trying to tease out how much of which is happening. And it's so important because my partner's not going to be able to heal for me the perceptual side. If I'm the victim of the injury, right, they did something that hurt me, right, they can take accountability for the objective side, and it is their role to identify that, work on it, heal and repair it with me, right, over time. That's their job. But my job is to identify the perceptual side of it. And sometimes there's no objective side of it. I was just triggered. And all the injury that I felt is mine. Mine to identify, to reframe, to refocus, and to maybe even repair with my partner, right? If it turned into bad behavior on my part because of the injury, right? Sometimes the injury might all be objective. There wasn't a part that I added to the injury to hurt myself with, right? It was just hurtful, and I did a good job managing the not hurting myself with the hurtful. And then sometimes, and I would say most of the time, it's a two-part injury, right? That my partner did something that was hurtful, and I layered on top of their hurt a meaning that made it even more hurtful. And when I did that, right, I've got to be aware that I've got to heal the perceptual part, right? Because that's the part of the injury that they can't manage or control. I control and manage that side, right? While they manage and heal the objective side. So this can be difficult to do. You can imagine, right? In a moment, we all have subjective experiences, but we pretend to ourselves all the time that we're masters of objective reality, right? So this can be really hard in the moment to kind of tease out what is bad behavior that my partner needs to be accountable for, right? And what's the perception that I add to that bad behavior that's my part of the injury, and sometimes the larger portion of the injury, the part of the injury that can linger longer even after my partner's tried to repair the objective side of it, right? If I don't heal the perceptual side, I can feel the pains of those injuries for years to come. So if you're struggling to kind of tease this out, like I suggested earlier, I would do it on paper. I would take a couple of the injuries and I'd try to create a graph and just kind of highlight how much of this injury that I'm experiencing was their actual bad behavior, right? And how much of this injury is my perception that I'm adding to that bad behavior. That can help you get closer to it. Journaling about these instances, that can help you get closer to it too. But if you could use some help, sometimes it's helpful to reach out and talk with a relational coach or a marriage counselor, right? To get that type of feedback from a professional that can help you kind of discern where the injuries from one partner ends and the injuries pick up in the other partner, right? To help heal the whole relationship. Our goal is to bring couples closer together by understanding the issues that get in the way of their relationship. Two loving partners who genuinely care about each other can still drift apart over time because of these types of dynamics. They can be hard to navigate. So if you could use some help, feel free to reach out to us. And I'd love to hear in the comments times that you've kind of encountered this, right? That you've had realizations that maybe you were adding to the injury through your perception, that your partner maybe didn't intend all the pain that you're feeling, that maybe the meaning you attached to their behavior exacerbated that injury even further, that you layered the injuries, how you identified it, and maybe what you did about it to solve it. As always, I'm so grateful to be with you. It's wonderful to spend this time with you. Our goal is to help couples everywhere thrive. If you know anybody who could benefit from this content, please share it with them. Please support our channel by liking and subscribing, and I look forward to being with you again soon. Take care.